People who grew up with terrible trauma can find love and create a lasting, stable, and loving relationship. And as anyone with childhood PTSD knows, getting close to someone can be hard to put together. And when a relationship does form, it can bring up old wounds around attachment and abandonment and betrayal, even on the good days. So when you bring into the mix an outside trauma, a death in the family, a loss of a job, a pandemic, relationships are going to be tested to the limit. And what's sad is unhealed trauma could break a relationship that actually is a good match and has the potential to be a safe and sturdy home base that not only brings happiness, but makes a space to keep healing your trauma. So whether a relationship is a good one or not, in good times and bad times, healing your trauma, including your powers to regulate intense waves of emotion and disruption to your life, is the superpower you need. My letter today is from a woman I'll call Lucy, and she writes, "Hi Anna, your channel has been incredibly helpful. Here goes. I was sexually abused by my father and abandoned by my mother, and because my mother made no serious attempts to protect me after she found out about the abuse, it was normal to me to keep a friendship with my father. Needless to say that because he built my brain, she says, my preservation for him has been far greater than any I had for myself. Skip to about 5 years ago. I met someone when I felt I was finally in a good place with my self-esteem. I felt competent in my life. I loved talking to him, and he gave me more space for my emotions and expression than I had ever given to myself. Relationships and friendships have always felt difficult to me for obvious reasons. Very shortly after we met, my father had a stroke, and I was the only one in the country to be contacted. All right, I've got the fairy pencil. I'm going to circle things I want to come back to. I'm going to read Lucy's letter all the way through just to hear what's going on. Then I'll come back to address some things I circled. Shortly into the relationship, father had a stroke. She was the only one in the country to be contacted, and she agreed under arguable manipulation, she says, to take on the role as her father's primary carer. Okay? Lucy writes, there were a few circumstances that led to myself and my boyfriend moving in together, and all of a sudden, my trauma hit like a tsunami. During all my years of therapy, not one of the practitioners had ever mentioned trauma. And I was largely alone in figuring it out. My partner was as supportive as he could be, and I was as supportive of his needs as I could be, but that was a very messy time. We got through it together, and I identified that I had trauma, and I began to be able to process it directly and heal the parts of the relationship that had been damaged during that time. I no longer speak to my father or my mother, she says. Okay. Just as things felt that they were on the up for us, my partner's father died suddenly at a young age. Now he had a wave of his trauma, both from the sudden death, but also from the memories of his childhood that started to surface. He had an avoidant mother, a narcissistic codependent father that was his whole world. So things got a bit messy again. Lots of arguing and misunderstanding each other. Transference, projection, codependency, anxious and avoidant attachment styles, you name it, we had it. Then COVID happened, and we were sitting in a stew of all this on our own for 2 years, and there was healing done, but there were so many ruptures. We've been tirelessly doing the work of loving ourselves and each other, but it hasn't been easy. Now things seem that they might be on the up again. We're collaborating on creative projects and generally trying to be advocates for ourselves in a way that no one was able to be for us before. This relationship has been the good enough relationship that has helped us both to heal in many ways, but we still go through pretty hairy ruptures. And my question is, if things start off on the wrong foot, can it get better? Are we just trauma bonded now? Am I just waiting for the other shoe to drop because that is what has continuously happened? Can an unhealthy relationship become a healthy one? I've betrayed him by threatening to leave on numerous occasions. He's betrayed me by cheating once and threatening violence once. We always seem to be able to talk through it and take necessary action and accountability. I just worry that we're fooling ourselves and that those talks are just band-aids on bullet wounds. Support and friends have been scarce because of all these circumstances, so it's difficult to have any perspective. Thank you so much for your time and attention. If you've gotten to the end of this email, I really appreciate it. regardless of the outcome of hitting send. All the best, Lucy. Aw, that's a very sweet letter. Lucy, yes! Yes, you can. You can. A relationship can get better. Okay, let's go through this. You had a horrible childhood, sexual abuse. Mother didn't do anything about it. You ended up, your main attachment was to your dad. You stayed friends. Yeah, who wouldn't? You're just a little kid, you know? Somebody's got to take care of you. I'm so sorry that happened. I'm so sorry there was nobody to stop it or protect you or set things straight for you. But what I'm hearing, Lucy, is you've done an incredible job of getting perspective on this. And, you know, that's so important and so foundational to healing, where you just know, yeah, it was abuse. Yeah, it was normal not to be able to set a little boundary as a tiny child. Good God. So about 5 years ago, we're skipping ahead, you met someone you met when you felt like you had good self-esteem. Good. You felt competent in your life. Competence is such a lovely thing to feel. Good. You loved talking to him, a very good trait in a relationship, and he gave me more space for my emotions and expression than I'd ever given to myself. Okay, what I hear is some ingredients that are very powerfully indicating good relationship, okay? Very shortly after we met, Father had a stroke and you were the only one to be contacted. Isn't it that way? Abusive people don't tend to have a lot of connections. It's one reason why connections are very important, and I'm going to get there with you, Lucy, but manipulation, probably guilt. I understand, you know, it's not a cut and dried answer what a person should do in that situation. So you took on the role as primary caregiver for a time. And at that time, there were circumstances that you moved in with your boyfriend. And it sounds like maybe you didn't feel like it was the best timing. But, you know, with everything that was going on in your life, maybe it was the right time. Maybe it brought about a stability you needed. And I don't know enough about the details of it day by day. Normally, I don't recommend people move in quickly with each other. It usually can lead to, you know, really putting a pressure cooker on your trauma, which you've gone through, which you would have been going through in or out of a relationship, right? But during all your years of therapy, not one of the practitioners ever mentioned trauma. And, you know, that just eats me up. Because, you know, you told me 2 sentences about your past and it's trauma. Trouble is, it just wasn't well understood, and to this day, there are practitioners out there who haven't bothered to get educated about it. Even people who are getting educated about it, like the education you need is like so infinite and vast. Personally, I love people who were traumatized themselves, who have healed it themselves, and they understand us like few others can. So I'm really glad you're here in this community because we do understand. It's trauma. So you were largely alone in figuring it out. I hear you. I was too. And your partner was as supportive as he could be. You were supportive of his needs as you could be, but that was a very messy time. I bet it was. And you got through it together, and you say, I identified that I had trauma and began to be able to process it directly and heal the parts of the relationship that had been damaged during that time. That's amazing, Lucy. That's like so much. And you no longer speak to your dad or your mom. Okay, that sounds right. So good. It's a big step. But I can also see how it would add a little bit of bumpiness to your path. All right. So just as things felt that they were on the up for us, my partner's father died suddenly at a young age. Now he had a wave of his trauma, both from sudden death, but also all his memories of childhood that started to surface. It does that, doesn't it? It does. You know, when a parent dies, stuff comes up out of the woodwork. He had an avoidant mother, a narcissistic codependent father who was his whole world, and things got a bit messy again for you two. Lots of arguing and misunderstanding each other, transference, projection, codependency, anxious and avoidant attachment styles. You name it, we had it. Lucy, I love your perspective and your levity about it because yes, this would be normal for 2 people who went through what you went through. Then COVID happened. And we were sitting in a stew of all of this on our own for 2 years. Yeah, please let that never happen again. That made everything worse. And what happened during that time, it's time to heal, okay? That worsening of problems is time to unpack so that we can get on with the overall healing that we were in progress on before. Or maybe not, you know, maybe sometimes the crisis that comes on us from deaths or pandemic, maybe sometimes that's the thing that pushes us forward, you know, and it does seem like it helped you, you know, get clear that trauma was driving your symptoms, which is beautiful because then finally you can be released from that feeling of like, what the hell's wrong with me? Why am I such a screw up? Why can't I be like other people? And I've even been asked, therapists, they were just like, why don't you just date nice people? They don't understand. So here you are, you're in understanding now, you're in action, you're working on your trauma directly, and you're doing it in the context of a relationship where I'm hearing how hard it is, which I understand and relate to, but that there's a strength there, there's a commitment to each other. So there have been ruptures, it sounds like arguments, tirelessly doing the work of loving ourselves and each other, but it hasn't been easy. That sounds right. It's tireless and it isn't easy, okay? That sounds right. So now things seem like they're getting better again. Collaborating on creative projects. Awesome. That's a good thing. That's a sign of life force running through the relationship. It also is a challenging thing, and I want to talk about that. If you live together, you're partners, and you're doing creative work together, and all of it's together, and you don't have a lot of outside support, there is the vulnerability. So let me get to that. You say the relationship has been the good enough relationship that's helped you both to heal in many ways, but we still go through pretty hairy ruptures. And my question is, if things start off on the wrong foot, honey, it's not the wrong foot. It's just a challenge, it's people with CPTSD feet. You're not wrong. We come as we are to this life, including the relationships that we form. So you're not on the wrong foot. You came in with PTSD. You both faced some life challenges. That with a little luck, that's not going to be happening all the time. And you were able to stay together and support each other. You've been able to advocate for yourself in a way that no one was quite able to do there. You both did it. So you ask, if things start off on the wrong foot, can it get better? Are we just trauma bonded now? Am I just waiting for the other shoe to drop because that is what's continuously happened? Yeah, you might. I totally understand if you have fear everything's going to fall apart. That's not just logical. It would be like stuck in your nervous system. Trauma healing can help you not only heal the echo of those old losses, but to also face honestly what you have right now and have discernment about is this good? That takes discernment. It takes clear thinking that's not cluttered by a lot of fearful and resentful thoughts, very anxious, angry, that might not be connected directly to what's happening in present time. When we bring that into a relationship, that's kind of where we create and exacerbate the ruptures. So you can bring those down, and then when you're talking and when you're working things out within the relationship, you can hear each other, you can express yourself, you can ask for things that are in line with realism rather than, kind of the unconscious wish so many of us go into relationships with of just save me, fix me, stop this pain from happening. I think if it's not stopped, I think you're causing the pain. That's the trauma thinking that ruins relationships. But I hear you really diligently trying to do this well. So can an unhealthy relationship become a healthy one? Yes, it can. I think people who have had serious damage done to their attachments, sexual abuse by a parent, when you're walking around with a wound like that and it's in progress, you'll always be in progress healing that. It's just not right to compare yourself to relationships on TV or people whose outsides look like they meet each other, they do some discernment, they get married, everything's perfect, We walk in, with some injuries, and we're a little bit limping with our ability to move forward sometimes, and we work with that, and we form the relationship, and the people who are going to love us as we are, even as they expect and require that we get up on our toes and not be abusive. Now, you had mentioned threatening to leave. I do. I often mention that's emotional abuse. But if you're in the middle of all this stuff, and certainly through the pandemic, I think many, many people made that mistake, and you have survived. He cheated once and threatened violence once. Those are fairly serious transgressions. And you say you've always been able to talk it through and take necessary action and accountability. So I do think couples can recover from wounds like that if they're taking necessary action and accountability. You worry that you're fooling yourselves and that those talks are just Band-Aids on bullet wounds. I get it. Support and friends have been scarce because of the circumstances, so it's hard to have perspective. That is so clear-eyed, Lucy. That is the issue, support and friends. So what I want to give you as your assignment is you need support and friends. There's so many ways you can do that. I know how hard it is to make friends when you're a trauma person and your ability to connect is wounded. I have courses on this, how to connect, how to stay regulated, how to work your relationship. I have those materials, if you want to check them out in my membership program on the courses page. But you also, I can't say enough about 12-step groups for people who participate in religion, church groups, things where you just go to a group where there's like-minded people, just the act of being together with other people. And what I loved about 12-step recovery is I was with other people who had somewhat similar challenges as I did, and I could be honest with them and they didn't judge me, and I could support them. Well, sometimes we judged each other, but that's because we weren't healed yet. So the 12-step programs, I think people get scared sometimes when it's like, I just saw people and, somebody was hitting on a woman and some people, they're just blabbing about their problems. And, you get all points on all along the spectrum of healing in there, but to participate in that project of healing as a group of people means you're building support. So when you have an argument with your partner, you have other people to go to. You don't have to process everything with him. You can use your tools, the daily practice techniques I teach. They're free. They help kind of unpack, that head. I do it twice a day. Check that out. It's down in the description section. But you have other friends. You could find other friends who also use these daily practice techniques. We have that in our membership community. And we read to each other what we wrote. We don't try to fix each other, but sometimes just admitting what the fears and the resentments are about a big thing like an argument, it just kind of goes, okay, it just sort of falls into perspective. So then, and I'm married, I have arguments, I take it to the daily practice. Sometimes I read to my friend who is willing to listen to what I wrote from time to time. And then when I do go talk to my husband about what's bothering me, it's come down from this whole thing to a few specific things that hurt me or that I want to request. And it's more something that he can hear. As a person with CPTSD, I spent decades, kind of crying and screaming to get my needs met and pushing people away. Using this daily practice and getting support from other people who are on the path of healing helped me to kind of bring it into where I could be heard, where somebody could actually respond to what I needed. And finally, I can be in a secure relationship where I'm loved. And part of love and security means you have a way to get through these rough patches. And two people with trauma, we can fantasize till the cows come home that if we were just with, some perfect person, but, we find people who get us. Somebody who gets you, you may only find 2 or 3 people like that in your life. And if you have a partner like that who gets you and supports you, it's worth working with. But if there's that threat of cheating or violence, yes, of course, that's a really good thing to take to a counselor. There's very good videos. When people want to help their relationship, the program that I recommend is the Gottman Institute, Gottman. They have tons of videos on YouTube to learn about techniques they have. Because there, it's not so much about the stories we're trying to tell that he said, she said. It's about techniques for listening and communicating. Like a lot of times, that is the thing that people need to not argue, is to feel heard, to feel that they're cared for and heard, even when you don't agree with what they're saying. I have a video lined up that could help you with the next steps, anybody who relates to this topic, and it's called 10 Things That Help Speed Trauma Healing, and I've got that video right here, and I'll see you very soon.